welcome to Coffee with CISOs from Lockstep Ventures. It wouldn't be right to do this with anyone else besides Rinki. I'm sorry, Lucas, you're second, but I had to do it with Rinki first. Rinki, thank you so much for joining. It's fun being in the host seat and getting to ask you questions. I know I've worked with you for a few years, but getting to actually ask you questions and explore different themes across your career is going to be something fun for me today. So thank you for entertaining this.
Yeah, how cool is this? Like when we started working together, would we have ever imagined sitting like this, having this conversation? It's like such a full circle moment.
But to kick off my interviews, I'll always ask the guests, what is your coffee order? What is your tea order? I actually don't know your tea order because you're usually up like 3 or 4 hours before you get into the office, so you're done with your tea already. But what is usually in your cup to start the day?
If I had time every day, nothing beats for me my own homemade masala chai that I make at home. But unfortunately, I can't sit there and spend the 15 minutes doing that. And so I end up just doing drip coffee with cream and sugar. And that's usually my morning coffee in the morning. If I go to Starbucks, which is my favorite coffee place, then I'll order a blonde vanilla latte with sugar-free vanilla syrup.
I love it. Thank you for sharing. And really what these conversations are all about is just exploring a little bit more about your personal journey because of course, you've done thousands of interviews where they've asked you professional questions about your background in cyber. But really with this series, I just want to tap into your own personal experience of jumping into cyber and what that's been like, especially now with your journey moving into a general partner seat. So we'll get to explore those themes today. First, I actually want to talk about your experience back in college, which is timely because we'll jump into this next, but I know your daughter is going through the college acceptance process. I want to explore what was your journey like in college. Was it pretty much a straight path into computer science and cyber? I know you went to UC Davis, which some folks might not know, so please share everything about what that experience was like.
Yeah, I actually, in my senior year, I didn't know what I wanted to do, to be honest. A senior year of high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I'd make a great lawyer, and so I told my dad I'm going to go to law school, and he's like, well, that's a second degree, not a first degree. So what's your first degree going to be? We need to decide that. He's like, it's basically like, if you want to go to a good school that's away from home, you better go into engineering or medicine, typical Indian parents. And and he's like, otherwise you can go like to De Anza or San Jose State and stay at home and then transfer and do what you want. And so I was like, I wanted to get away from home as far as possible. I was good with math. I was really good with computers. So computer science ended up being a natural fit. Wasn't super excited about it, but I was like, you know what, I'll just go do that to get away from home. Ended up doing computer science at UC Davis, and I never knew that I would end up in cybersecurity. I didn't even know there was such a thing. Most people didn't know there was such a thing. Spent 4 years in college, basically being a great developer. I also, my first few years of college, I partied a lot. Spent a lot of times with friends and learned a lot. Actually, when I look back, the most meaningful time for my college experience was all the social experiences and learning from mistakes. But yeah, stuck to computer science engineering. I actually graduated. I finished all my courses a quarter early, and I got recruited by PG&E, and that was my first job out of college. But the college experience was definitely a really fun one. And I think one of the things you look back at is I really wish I spent more time enjoying the journey of learning. When you're in college, you're obviously having fun with your friends, but you want to kind of rush through it. And now we try to find time to learn new things all the time. And so, yeah, but I really loved my college journey. I loved UC Davis.
Yeah, I know that's something that a lot of students can resonate with, is just not knowing exactly what that concentration will look like until your junior, almost even senior year of college. And then it's time to find, a big kid job. And so that can be really intimidating. But I'm glad that you were able to have that experience at PG&E and then just get to kind of take your career from there. And I know you mentioned in the past, you also created something because you saw that your dad was spying on your AIM conversations, and that kind of kickstarted. Was that your jump into computer science in general, or was that just something that you were naturally good at and you got to explore more in school?
I grew up in the Bay Area, and my uncles, my dad, everybody was into tech, right? And so I was one of those weird kids that was exposed to technology. There's pictures of me as a baby on like a keyboard and on a computer, right? And so in somebody's lap. And so I was exposed to this so early on. My dad was one of the first Java instructors out there. So as soon as my freshman year, or even maybe earlier than that, of high school, I was already a pretty good developer. Like I knew how to write code. I knew, I was writing Visual Basic, Java, already as a freshman. And so like I was exposed to this super early on. Fast forward, I used to use AOL Instant Messenger. That was our way to privately communicate with our friends on the computer. Yeah, my dad wanted to see what we were doing all night on the internet. And so he installed a keylogger to spy on us. And of course, I heard him talking to my mom, and he was like sharing things we were chatting about, and that's how I found out he installed something. And so then I wrote a program to detect and remove every time he would install it. And so we had this cat and mouse game. I think when I look back, I always had a hacker mindset, probably not to do anything good. So I'm glad I ended up getting in the corporate world to do good work, but it was always try to figure out ways to hide things from my parents and stuff like that. But that my brain was definitely wired like that.
For me, I definitely protested my parents a lot growing up, but I wish I was smart enough to develop the program you created. But I love that. So one thing I also wanted to explore was, I know you're a parent. That's something that you're very proud of. You're an award-winning CISO. You have all these accolades throughout your career, but I know you as a person, and I know your proudest accomplishment are your two kids, Ria and Shrey. And I know Ria is going through that, senior process of waiting for her admissions to come through. What was that experience like on the parent side, and like what advice do you have for any parents that are kind of going through that process?
When I remember going through the process myself, and I wasn't the best high school student, and I remember filling out that application and having to put my grades and see your entire high school years and your hard work or lack thereof on a piece of paper, and the anxiety it gives you at a moment that there's nothing you can do about it, right? Like this is it, and now you're applying. And my daughter, on the other hand, has been a really good student, and so she was doing the application process. And I don't know, I think like kids these days, they put so much pressure on themselves that our job as parents has changed. It's like to be that stress relief, be there for support, providing them with the resources to the best that we can to help them with that application process and then reduce the stress. Unfortunately, she was like, I'm taking no vacations during that college application period. She didn't want any distractions, but it was just really being there for her, reviewing her essays. I think a really important part that's overlooked is when you're writing your essays, you're kind of a storyteller of these really critical moments in your life or learning. And being a storyteller is hard. And so one of the things we had been working on before she was even doing her application process, in fact, I've been working on this with her throughout high school, is what's the story? What is it that you're trying to achieve out of these things? Why is it meaningful to you? Be able to describe those things. And a lot of your application process is telling the story of who you are. And that's not just on your grades and the extracurriculars you're doing, but tying that back to why it's meaningful for you. But that's the best I could do, because the rest of it is her work. And now she's done with the application process. We're waiting and seeing where she'll end up going. And yeah, we're crossing fingers. It's to a university she wants to go to for computer science.
Yeah, Ria's a rock star, so no doubt she's going to get into wherever she wants. So next month is a big month, so I'll be rooting for her too. But I think even that advice of just storytelling and trying to find what resonates with other humans and being authentic with your own story is so critical, even for folks today who are in technical roles, or even in my role as communities. In the world of AI, it's so easy to rely on, ChatGPT or other tools to help communicate and write your stories. I feel like just knowing how to communicate authentically will carry you throughout your career. And that's something that you really have to hone in and teach yourself and continue to perfect. So I know that's something that we've talked about. So I think that's great advice for not only students, but practitioners and professionals in every domain. But staying along that theme of, being a parent, something that is talked about a lot is just being a mom in tech. And something I want to explore with you is, what has your experience been like being a mom in tech, specifically in a high stakes, high risk role like the CISO role?
Yeah, it was so funny. Like yesterday, I was called one of the most entitled people ever, but I go back to my early days in my career, and I had kids really young, right? And I I remember and this doesn't feel that long ago because my career in cyber is 22 years now. And I'm talking like 19 years back. I had Ria, or I was pregnant with Ria, and then I had Ria. She's almost 18 now. But the office place didn't even have nursing rooms, and maybe many offices still in the world don't, but that became a requirement in California later. And so a dedicated nursing room that had badge access for mothers that didn't really exist as a thing, right? So think about, you have a long commute, you're still breastfeeding, you're doing all these things, and the workplace is not an ideal situation for a new mom. And I struggled with that. I had a lot of battles on like creating work from home policies, making the workplace better for women, mothers. And then also like, honestly, as a result, one of my early roles, I fought for getting the first work from home policy written. Sounds archaic because now that's like a very accepted thing after the pandemic. But back then that wasn't standard. And so there was no standard on it. Like either your managers allowed it or they didn't. And I was the only female in these teams, and I really fought hard we need some kind of standard or policy. And we got it established. And the surprising thing was, it wasn't the moms, it was the dads that came and said, thank you so much for getting this in place. I can be a better equal partner or equal father at home. And that was very meaningful to me. And I realized that when women are in the workforce and we stay and we assume good intent and drive education around these things, it becomes a better place for everybody, and that diversity is needed in the workplace. But it was really, really tough. And I've always said this, that as mothers, we battle with a lot of guilt. I think fathers too, but mothers, I think the expectations are higher. And I think that we battle with a lot of guilt. And it's not like folks around you necessarily make you feel less guilty. Sometimes that adds to the guilt as well. I remember folks at work saying that, they thought the nanny was my daughter's mother or whatever, and they were like surprised to see me and things like that. And I would feel a lot of guilt with those things. What I finally realized is, I'm a better person and a better mother because I do the things I do. It makes me better around it, and it makes the time that I have with my kids more meaningful. And so what I realized is, like, we've got to make decisions. Everybody has to make decisions. Like, I'm going to go to this happy hour and I'm going to miss that dance practice with my daughter, but I feel really good about that decision, and there's compromise in it. And once I kind of trained my brain to think like that, as long as I'm feeling good about the decisions I'm making, I stand behind them, there's always going to be compromise. And that's kind of how I've operated as a mom in tech. And I would say the other thing is, I've always assumed good intent. I've never been like, I'm being treated this way because I'm a woman or because I'm a mom. I've always assumed good intent, but maybe folks don't have the education. So like, why don't we share what it's like being a mom in tech or a woman in tech? So, I think, of course, our country and things have progressed in ways that I think are better for mothers in the tech environment in offices with a lot of the policies that are in place now.
And I think it took a lot of confidence and bravery for you to speak up and to change those policies at work. But to your point, you also need allies who are there to vouch for you and advocate for you, and also just help amplify, the change that you're trying to make. So I think that's awesome that not only were you vouching for women, but you were also bringing men along the journey so that it's just a better workplace for all. And something that I personally really admire about you is your confidence and your executive presence and your ability to really work any room that you're in. Working with you for a few years, it could be a small team of 3 or a large room of 50, and you still have this executive presence that I admire and I try to build for myself and my own brand as well. So how did you gain that confidence, and what tips and tricks would you have for someone who's trying to build that confidence in their career?
Yeah, I did a post about this, and it was real. I want to say it was around about 15 years ago. I was like literally held back from a promotion, and I didn't understand why. I was in an environment where it was a lot of legal folks. The dress code was a certain way. How you presented was there was a certain expectation, and I didn't get it. So I was dressing like myself, and I was really young in that environment too. And I probably didn't present the best. And I got feedback that my presence wasn't there, and I didn't quite understand what it meant. I was fortunate that the company I was working with at the time, they decided to invest in a coach for me. And it came down to, you're not dressing right for the environment you're in. You're not presenting well. And I literally she helped me find new clothes to wear. She showed me how I need to present, how I need to sit. And I feel for a little bit I became a grandma with the way I was dressing. It wasn't authentic to who I was. but I felt like I needed to play a certain part. So at that point in my career, it was all about basically acting and being, it was almost acting. And actually the woman that was the coach at that time was an actress. And so she basically said, you're acting for a part that you're applying for an acting role or something like that. And you need to start playing that role that you want to be in. And so that meant everything. So I literally changed my look, changed my style, really focused hard on how I just presented myself, not my speaking or my communication skill, but it was all about that. I ended up getting the promotion that helped. I didn't fully feel authentic to who I was at that point in time, and it was more around the environment I was in and just the expectations there. Fast forward, I started working at companies where it was more customer facing. There was more customer facing interactions, and at that point, I had to do a lot of presentations. I think I was a decent presenter and a good communicator, but how do you become even better, and how do you make sure that get rid of all the little things that are the weaknesses that are holding you back? And I spent a lot of time then getting a new executive coach to help me on my presentations, everything from what the slides look like to how I was standing, how my voice was, everything. And that helped me incredibly. I've worked really hard at it, like super, super hard at it. It's not easy. It's not just the coaching and the training, it's a lot of practice, continuing to watch yourself and improve. Fortunate that I got those roles that I really got to be kind of authentic to who I am. And part of that is also realize that with experience, you then gain the right to feel more on I can be who I am because I've earned the right to be here. And so now I feel like I can be super authentic in who I am, and then I know when I need to dress the part versus where I can just be me. And I continue to work on myself on that presentation style and how I show up in rooms.
I think for a lot of folks who maybe are envious of people who look like they're just naturally extremely extroverted or just born with this talent, but to hear that you had to develop this over time and you put a lot of effort in coaching and almost kind of faking it till you made it. And really just once you reach that level of confidence of knowing that you've earned this, and then from there you can kind of be authentically yourself. I think all of those pieces of advice will resonate with folks who are just trying to find their voice and their presence, especially now that most folks present remotely. So how do you feel and look engaging through the camera? Along those lines of kind of faking it till you make it, or maybe feeling some sort of imposter syndrome. I know the jump from practitioner into this founding partner and general partner role has been a journey for you. What would people, underestimate the most about starting your own fund?
Oh my gosh. It's been the most thrilling and exciting and times ever, but man, are there deep battle scars as well, right? I say that I think when I think about in the last decade, maybe, where have I learned the most? It's been in the last few years starting this fund, because being a VC, it's a whole different discipline. Yeah, and we're investing in cybersecurity companies, so that part we understand around the companies, the founders and the tech. But doing a fund is totally something different. The number of books I've read and articles, the hundreds of conversations with mentors, and getting lots of conflicting advice, because people have found success in their own ways. And so they're convicted that that might be the right path. And so you have to then absorb all this and figure out what the right way of doing things is. I'm really proud that I think this is the only fund that's actually the only cybersecurity fund that's CISO run, and I'm really proud of that. And I think it brings a really different, unique element, but it's a lot of learning too. I mean, I remember our early calls when we were raising money. Man, I don't even want, if those were recorded, I would want them burned and buried forever, because I just think about those and I'm like, oh my gosh, how embarrassing and junior did we sound on those calls? But those are the ones that you learn from. And obviously having a partner in crime where you're giving critical feedback and learning from each other is so, so important. And obviously Lucas and I have worked together in so many different capacities that we knew that this would work with the two of us, because we knew we can give each other the feedback. We can have the bad days and recover from them. The hardest part of building a fund for us, it's been raising money, asking people for money. We've never had to do that, right? So that's the toughest part, and building a whole new network of folks, because you're now hanging with a different crowd. You're having to attend different kinds of meetings and conferences. So that's been the hardest part. But I think the best part of it is that connected with so many incredible, amazing, inspiring people. We've built this incredible community just to give back. And then, I think it's just all come together in a way that's super meaningful. And part of it was, can we get into the best deals? And hell yeah, we've gotten into the best deals. And so it's been an incredible journey so far. And my dream is that to do this full time.
And I would say having that, wearing both hats is definitely a unique lens, and it plays into both sides of, the community element of us building a separate community entity, as well as the VC arm of making smart investments. Has your investor lens changed the way you think about cybersecurity? And also on the flip side, being in the trenches as a practitioner, has that changed the way you evaluate founders and emerging tech?
I think obviously at the end of the day, when I'm always going to look at the tech and the founders, like even before I was an investor, I was always really interested in that. I loved connecting with founders and early innovation in the cybersecurity ecosystem. And so that's always been a passion of mine. So for me, when I evaluate tech or evaluate people, it's still the same lens. I'm still coming at it from an InfoSec person, which is what I think is so unique. I think the difference is then, even if I love a founder and I love what they're building, it may not make financial sense to invest because of the stage they're at and because of where our thesis of the fund is. So those lenses start coming in that, like, I might want to be a customer of this company, but it may not be right for investment. And then vice versa, right? Like, I may be super bullish about investing in a company, but that problem doesn't exist in the environment that I work in. So it may not be the right one for me to be a customer of. So I think there is some of that. But at the end of the day, I think still I lead with the practitioner first when I'm evaluating the company and the founders and the tech. And that's what gets me excited. And that's what helps me champion the technology with others, right? And so I think that's really important, and that's still what I lead with.
Yeah, and I think that's the magic behind Lockstep, is just always thinking about practitioner first on any side. From the community, of course, we want to pour love back into the practitioner base. And then I know that's what really resonates with founders, is when you're speaking with them and you're exploring their tech, is just, do you have that founder conviction? Do you believe in the practitioner and their ability to carry products into the market? So I know that's something that's core to us in our blood. So along those lines, for someone who maybe is jumping into the CISO role, who's maybe what we're calling an aspiring executive, maybe director level folks who want to jump into the CISO seat, what advice do you have for that next generation of CISOs?
I think one is make sure that where you're working, it's clear that that's what you're aspiring to do. I think one of the things, and I've written articles and spoken about this, but I think it's really important for CISOs to make sure they're bringing their next in lines, I would say, to board meetings and to executive meetings to get that kind of exposure. But I think asking for those moments too, right? It's, as you get into the CISO role, you're not just a subject matter expert in a vertical, but the ability to communicate with the business, the ability to understand what's important to different leaders in the business, what is the mission of the company, and really getting absorbed in that is going to be really important, because now you're basically the person that's coming in and helping navigate risk for the company. And so I think the CISO role has changed, but make sure you're networked. I think that's so important. That's why we built the community, right? That it's really important not to go and search for a community when you're in need of it, but be in a community or be in communities so that when you're in the need for something, you've got 100 helping hands that want to come and lift you up. And so I think these things are really important. I think also the power of community. I say this again and again, like everybody, all of us took our first CISO job at one point and another, yet we keep recreating the wheel around things. Let's help each other out whether it's a board deck or whether it's going to navigating a difficult situation or meeting or an incident. We're all here to help each other. And so I think those things are really important. And I think keep making sure you're learning and you're investing in yourself, even when the company may not have the resources to dedicate to that. Make sure you're effectively communicating. And so I think those are the most important things I can say. And of course, you may want the CISO role. The company may not have that opportunity, but keep building on that. And, it's not only being in the security conversations, other conversations can a lot of times help, business conversations, being a part of them, so that you can really learn and navigate the business, which is what CISOs do this day. We're helping navigate the business through the understanding of risk.
Absolutely. And I feel like sometimes the biggest challenge is just raising your hand for help. And so that's what I love about the community that we've built is, we're going to be launching a mentorship program where aspiring executives can be paired with CISOs and they can get that one-to-one mentorship, but also just a call to action to the cyber community in general. It's okay to ask for help. And as you mentioned, it's important to build those relationships so that down the line, when you are looking to jump into that CISO seat, you have 100 hands ready to help. So I love that. And I know you mentioned about writing about that. Something that you've also written about is just CISO burnout and how that's important to you of making sure you prevent burnout in your role. And as someone who works 2 full-time jobs during the day and also as a mom, what are some, tips or tricks or rituals that you personally use to help prevent yourself from burning out?
Yeah, I mean, you know this about me pretty well now. And just to wrap up on the prior thing too, like I think a lot of times as CISOs, especially in new roles, you want to be kind of a know-it-all. I think the best thing is too, like, how many times have you seen me go like, I have like no idea on what the answer to this is. Let's pull in the right people into the room. It's actually good leadership, and we've got to do that. And sometimes the good people are on your team. Sometimes we got to bring outside in experts. And so it's a really important thing to do that. And that also is inclusive of when you're doing board presentations and things like that. Bring the people you need, and be the subject matter expert in the areas you need to be, but you don't have to be in all of it. And so I just wanted to wrap it by saying that. But on the burnout piece, like I will come and tell you on the days where I'm like, I didn't exercise today. I almost feel like not clean or something when I don't exercise. It is like the way that I clear my mind, right? In the morning, I don't do anything. Sometimes right now I'm watching Grey's Anatomy on my Peloton bike, or I'll go down and do weightlifting or whatever. But I have to exercise in the morning, and it's clear my brain. All I'm doing is focusing on exercising, burning calories and sweating it out. And everybody knows, my kids know, do not bother me. Like, I will snap if you bother me when I'm exercising. That is the only time I have for myself. Leave me alone. And they know, they've been trained not to bother me. They bother me even in the middle of a meeting or a podcast like this. They would come in, even at this age that they're at, they'll come in and bother me, but they will not bother me when I'm exercising. That is my like Zen time. Outside of that, I do think it's really important. You mentioned this before. I'm actually not, folks think I'm extroverted. I'm not. I'm actually very introverted, and I like the time to myself. But at the same time, I think it's when you want downtime, it's good to go back, kick back a drink with your friends, your colleagues. And I love doing that. I'll throw down a Jameson every now and then, probably more now than then. But yeah, I think like, enjoying the time with the people that you work with. We have hard days of stress. And I think like you've got to find that downtime. You have to find it. Otherwise the job will suck you in.
And it's about just enjoying the journey. Of course, there's going to be hard days, especially for you working 2 full-time jobs. There's definitely been an uptick in Jameson, and I blame me for being the culprit of inviting you out. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rinki. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on as my first guest of Coffee with CISOs. I think to wrap up, I would love to just throw you on your feet. Would love to hear one hot take that you have about anything in cyber right now.
I think, it's funny. Everybody's talking about AI and cybersecurity right now, and yet half of us are still like digging in to understand what the implications of everything is right now. And I think that there's been this whole thing around, is AI a bubble? Is this going to be a bubble that bursts? What's going to happen with cyber? I'm still very bullish about cybersecurity and what we're doing with AI and how this is just going to transform as an industry faster than we've ever seen. One thing I will say is, I don't think anybody knows right now. Nobody has the answers, but everybody's pretending to know. That's my hot take. And I think we're figuring it out together in what is it going to take what is agent to agent communication going to look like? What do we actually need around protection? How are we going to prevent data leakage? Like, nobody has answers to any of this. And there's, so I love actually the fact that I'm saying this. I love it because there's so much innovation happening that we need to invest in. But anybody that knows how to solve this problem, I think anybody that's saying we know it, I think we've got a ways to go.
Well, thank you so much, Rinki. This has been a blast getting to talk through some questions that I've actually never asked you in your career. So thank you for joining as the first official guest, and hope to have you back on the pod in the future.
I can't wait. You were amazing at this, and I can't wait to see now the future guests and to listen in. I think this is going to be a fantastic series.